The crash wasn't soft. Flames licked at the underbelly of the freighter, emergency systems screamed, and Dan barely managed to punch out before the thing buried itself nose first in a jungle of purple trees. He landed hard, bounced once, and groaned as his suit's left leg seal popped with a hiss. Great. Oxygen leak. He limped toward the only structure showing signs of life, a domed temple glistening like pearl under the twin suns. It looked sacred, silent, and judging by the way the vines carefully avoided its walls, very much still in use. He hoped whoever was inside wouldn't shoot him on sight. Or worse, charge him for trespassing. Dan staggered through the arched entrance and found girls. Dozens of them. Tall, silver-skinned, and wide-eyed with antennae that perked at the sight of him. They stood frozen in their translucent robes, each one holding some kind of glowing orb or scroll. The tallest among them gasped. By the ancients, it's real! Dan raised his hands. Hey, I'm not here to start anything. Just crashed. Need water. Maybe a place to rest? They didn't move. One girl leaned in and whispered loudly. He speaks. His tongue, it moves like the old songs. Another clutched her scroll to her chest. He's taller than I imagined. Look at the way it hangs. Dan glanced down. His suit's front panel had torn halfway open, revealing the waistband of his thermal briefs. Oh, for this isn't a show, ladies. They huddled together, whispering furiously. Should we engage the ritual? No, not yet. We haven't completed our observation phase. But he's already exposed part of his base garment. Dan scratched the back of his neck. Look, I don't know what the hell this place is, but I'm not here for any rituals. I just need a recharge, maybe some bandages. The translator flickered, stuttering. He requires intimate restoration and band binding. All of them shivered. One fainted. Oh, come on! Dan backed up, bumping into a pillar carved with what looked suspiciously like an alien Kama Sutra. Seriously? The head girl stepped forward, barely able to meet his gaze. Are you fully functional? Excuse me? She cleared her throat, face flushing a pale blue. Your species is said to have remarkable regenerative stamina. We were told your kind can last for hours. Even during atmospheric entry. Dan blinked. We wear heat shields. That's not what. Wait. What do you think I'm here for? We thought humans were extinct. Or, at least, extinct in this region. The sisterhood prepared for this day. The day when one would return. To test us. Oh no, Dan muttered. I've landed on a damn fantasy fulfillment cult planet. Please. Another girl stepped forward, her voice trembling. Do not judge our inexperience. We were taught from the manuals. We've studied every entry, every insert. Dan held up both hands. Stop. You're making it sound like I'm some kind of stud. Right. Another girl piped up. He must be hungry. Do humans consume nectar through oral suction? Dan coughed. We eat food. Not whatever you're talking about. They all looked disappointed. Still, they led him to a glowing cushion near the center of the temple. They sat around him in a circle, staring. One held up what looked like a crystalline rod. Does your species prefer to be stimulated with direct friction or indirect praise? Dan buried his face in his hands. I need a nap. And a new translator. Preferably one that doesn't turn first aid into first base. They didn't move. One girl carefully reached forward and touched his shoulder. Forgive us. We have never met a male of any kind. The sisterhood was formed to preserve the purity of knowledge. You are the first intrusion. Dan exhaled slowly. I didn't mean to intrude. But if you're gonna keep using words like that, at least buy me dinner first. They all gasped. We are so unprepared for this level of coupling. Dan looked around. No exit. No working comms. Just a circle of alien girls ready to study him like a textbook. He groaned again. This is going to be the weirdest week of my life. Dan awoke to a gentle humming. His limbs were sore, His suit half unzipped, and something warm was wrapped around his ankle. He looked down to see a thin tendril-like vine pulsing with light. He jerked back. "Apologies," came a soft voice beside him. One of the alien girls, lime green hair, wide silver eyes, sat cross-legged with a glowing notepad. "We were calibrating your durability." He blinked. "With vines? They respond to pheromonal charge. You nearly overloaded the basal loop." She looked impressed. "It twitched." Dan sat up. "Okay, listen. I'm flattered, kinda, but can you stop testing me like I'm some exotic livestock?" Another girl entered, holding a tray with a steaming cup. "Your morning extract. Brewed from our finest root fluids. It should stimulate your lower systems." He took it warily. "By lower systems, you mean digestion, right?" She hesitated. "I think so." Dan took a sip and immediately coughed. "Tastes like battery acid and honey. That means it's working." He handed it back. "I'll take my chances with dehydration." The girls gathered again, watching him like he was about to give a lecture. One held up a small cylindrical object. "We found this on your belt. Is it for enhancement?" Dan stared. "That's a med injector," they whispered. "So it does penetrate." He yanked it back. "It's for healing. Not your bedtime games." Another stepped forward holding his multi-tool. "And this vibrates?" "It's a power drill." They nodded solemnly. "Advanced?" Dan stood up, tugging his suit straight. "Where's the elder? The one in charge? I need someone with common sense." A girl raised her hand. "She's meditating. She said not to disturb her unless the human initiated a full-body quake." Dan didn't even ask what that meant. He tried walking toward the exit, but a wall of curious girls followed him. They asked questions nonstop. "Is your mating always so aggressive? Do all Earth males carry their own tools? Is it true you emit heat when excited?" "I'm leaving now," he muttered, pushing through them. "But we've prepared the merging chamber." "Yeah, I'm sure you have," he snapped. "Not interested." They looked crushed. One sniffled. "Was it something we misinterpreted? Should we have shown more restraint?" Another whispered. "Or less?" He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Look. You're all very curious. And I'm sure you mean well. But humans don't just jump into these things. There's context. Consent. Emotional build-up. You don't just drag someone into a steamy, glowy room and ask them to merge cores." They huddled together again, discussing in hushed tones. He heard phrases like consensual hesitation and emotional foreplay spiral. One finally turned back. "Then teach us. Demonstrate your species approach. We wish to learn." Dan waved his hands. "No demonstrations. Just conversation. Words. Ask me about my favorite color or food. Something normal." They blinked. "What is your preferred insertion rhythm during nutrient exchange?" He nearly choked. "You mean eating?" "Yes." "Is fast better than slow?" He held up a hand. "We'll work on phrasing." The tallest girl stepped forward, regal in posture. "Dan of Earth. We understand you are uncomfortable. But our biology urges education. We have no prior exposure to male anatomy. No experience with flesh coordination or rhythm modulation. Please guide us." Dan stared, then groaned. "I'm not your biology textbook. But your presence awakens something in us. Probably your survival instinct. I nearly crashed into your temple." They didn't laugh. He leaned against a pillar, head thudding. "I came here to deliver parts. Not explain human mating protocols." Another girl tilted her head. "Is that a euphemism?" "No. No euphemisms. No more double meanings." They looked puzzled. One whispered, "I think he's becoming unstable. His skin is flushing." Dan shouted, "Because I'm embarrassed. Not aroused." The whispering stopped. A girl raised a finger. "Embarrassment is a prelude to vulnerability. And vulnerability enhances compatibility. He gave up. Okay. Fine. You want to understand humans? Step 1. Stop touching my gear without asking. They nodded. Step 2. No more surprise rituals. If you want to interact, ask first. More nods. Step 3. Stop calling everything a penetration opportunity. It's a door. It opens. It doesn't mean anything else. The notepad girl raised her hand. What if it's both? He gave her a look that could melt metal. They looked at one another, then back at him. We will study your customs thoroughly, Earth male. We will adapt. Dan muttered. God help me. Dan sat in the center of a low-lit chamber surrounded by cushions and incense burners puffing sweet steam into the air. It wasn't his idea. He had been lured in with the promise of repairs for his ship, only to be told he must first complete a calibration of compatibility. The translation was clearer now. Unfortunately. A voice broke the silence. Would you prefer to be touched gently or vigorously? Dan didn't even look up. Touched? I came in here to fix my comm array. Another chimed in. Yes, but the comm only opens after the physical alignment test. He sighed. And what does that involve? Observation, mirroring, and synchronized stimulation. He held up a hand. Let's define terms, shall we? The tall one leaned forward, antennae twitching. We begin by matching posture. Then we apply alternating pressure to the core area to gauge heat transfer. Dan's eye twitched. You're talking about hugs, aren't you? Correct. Prolonged, full-body, multi-limb embraces. Then just say hugs. A girl at the side whispered. That term sounded far more dangerous in the old texts. Another one giggled. Earth hugs sound like weapons of affection. Dan stood, brushing off imaginary dust. All right, listen. I appreciate your hospitality, but I'm not a test subject. I'm a delivery pilot. My cargo was 40 crates of nutrient paste. That's it. Not sensual wisdom. Not erotic discipline. Paste. One alien looked puzzled. So you're a spreader of smooth substances? Dan blinked. Don't twist my words. They all nodded solemnly. We must not twist the spreader. He groaned. Why is every sentence I speak turned into innuendo around here? The instructor-like girl gestured toward the cushions. Our mating instructors were lost to exile years ago. We've studied only data. Fragments. Holograms. We were told human men could engage 10 females and still request more. Dan raised a brow. 10? Maybe if we had power naps and electrolytes. They took notes furiously. Power naps, essential. I didn't say I'd do that. I said I'd need recovery. You're turning every joke into doctrine. A younger girl leaned in, voice innocent. Do human males actually go down for maintenance? Dan paused. That depends on what you mean. To service their mate's control panel? He choked. Okay, that's not even subtle anymore. She smiled. Then it's true. I said no euphemisms. But your people are full of them. We watched a thing called human films, Earth flicks. Dear God. They often end with shared physical release and mutual sustenance. He rubbed his face. You watched rom-coms, didn't you? We observed intense licking. Melting. Cream-filled items. Is that your mating food? Ice cream. It's dessert. A moment of silence passed. We are not equipped to cool human desserts, one whispered. Dan finally sat back down. You're not ready for humans. You're not even ready for sarcasm. The leader stepped forward. We want to be. We voted. As one. That you may be our guide. I'm not a guide. I'm a guy. She nodded. A guide. Dan stared at her. That's not a word. Another added. We wish to be guided. Gently. With steady rhythm. Increasing in tempo, if trust is built. He pointed. See that right there? That's the phrasing problem. You keep talking like we're about to film a scene, not have a conversation. But conversation is the first stage of seduction, yes? Only if it's not a job interview. A quiet voice piped up from the back. Should we prepare questions about his childhood to build emotional arousal? Dan froze. Emotional connection. Not arousal. Very different. They nodded, jotting things down again. One girl stood and walked up with two objects. One was a data slate. The other was unmistakably one of his socks. I found this in your chamber. It carries a strong biological signature. May we study it? He reached for it. That's not what that's for. We wish to inhale it together. It will build our olfactory imprint memory. No. No sniffing. But scent triggers mate bonding. Then you're going to have a weird bond with my foot. They looked at each other. If he allows foot, perhaps he allows full contact later. Dan shouted. It's a sock, not a signal. The elder finally arrived, looking serene and confused. He raises his voice. Is he initiating the passion cry? He's yelling because you're all driving him insane. A silence settled over the group. One girl looked heartbroken. Have we failed? Are we unworthy of stimulation? Dan shook his head. You're not unworthy. You're just overthinking everything. You don't need advanced technique or rituals. Just be real. They didn't understand. Start with respect. Consent. Boundaries. And stop reading Earthflix romance movies like survival guides. One raised her hand. What if we made you a meal and didn't mention fluids once? Dan paused. That would be a good start. The elder smiled. Then tonight, no testing. No rituals. Just nourishment. Dan exhaled. Finally. The youngest one whispered. Do we lick the dessert off his fingers or… He pointed. No. Dan sat with a mouthful of something purple and sticky, trying to pretend it tasted better than it looked. The girls watched him eagerly. No one had tried to measure his pulse or ask about his thrust rating in the last hour. Progress. A chime echoed through the temple. The doors hissed open. Galactic patrol uniforms stepped in, two armored officers flanking a bored-looking inspector holding a data tablet. The lead officer scanned the room, then locked eyes with Dan. Human male, unregistered presence, Class M biozone. Identify. Dan raised a hand, still chewing. Cargo pilot. Crash landed. Didn't ask to be part of whatever this is. One alien girl ran to the officer. You mustn't take him. He's only just begun imprint calibration. Dan almost choked. What? No. I've barely had lunch. The inspector looked up from her tablet. We've received multiple flag transmissions. Keywords include manual stimulation, sacred probing, and moisture synchronization. Dan stood. All taken wildly out of context. The younger alien girl added. He refused penetration more than once. It's documented. Dan held up a hand. She's talking about the biodome. I didn't want to go through the main gate. The inspector narrowed her eyes. So you resisted entry? Yes. Because they had glowing rods and they wouldn't stop sniffing my socks. Another girl chimed in. We did nothing without his reluctant participation. That's not the defense you think it is. The inspector scribbled something. Species human. Noted for erratic hormonal discharge, spontaneous leadership tendencies, and confusing metaphors. Not to mention overactive glands and random shirtlessness. Dan threw up his hands. That happened once, during the crash? One officer looked up from a scan. His biofield is still unstable. He's emitting pheromones on par with a rutting Sornax beast. Dan snapped. That's called stress sweat. The inspector kept scrolling. One report mentioned the human thrusted into the sacred circle and left fluid behind. He pointed furiously. That was a battery and it leaked because someone jammed it into a fruit bowl. The aliens looked away, blushing. Another girl added helpfully. He also rejected our offering of synchronized limb entanglement. Dan turned to the officers. Is that illegal now? The inspector smirked. Not illegal. Just rare. The officer on the left tilted his head. Should we tag him for quarantine? He's not contagious, one alien girl said. Just passionate. And confusing. The inspector folded her tablet. You're lucky. The Galactic Court classifies humans as culturally hazardous but biologically desirable. You're being extracted before someone gets accidentally impregnated through emotional exposure. Dan blinked. That's not even. Wait, that can't happen, right? They didn't answer. As they guided him toward the exit, the elder alien approached. Will you return? He paused. That depends. Will there be less poking and fewer euphemisms? She smiled. We cannot promise. But next time, we'll prepare more suitable desserts. He sighed. I don't even know what that means anymore. Back aboard the patrol ship, the inspector handed him a sealed report. The title read, Subject 11482, Potential Galactic Sensual Ambassador. Dan stared. This a joke? The officer replied deadpan. They've filed for long-term human study. You've been petitioned by the Sisterhood for exclusive, educational visitation rights. He leaned back in the seat. I crash-land one time and now I'm a syllabus. The ship hummed as it lifted off. From below, a dozen alien girls waved, some holding scrolls, others holding something that looked suspiciously like his spare underwear. Dan covered his face. I'm never living this down. The inspector glanced at him. You're lucky. Most humans get forgotten out there. Dan muttered. Not me. I get remembered as the guy who declined 20 virgins and started a mating reform movement. She raised a brow. Impressive. He looked at her. That wasn't a compliment, was it? She smiled. Not entirely. As the ship jumped to light speed, Dan closed his eyes. Somewhere in the galaxy, his reputation was being exaggerated. Again. He just hoped the next planet had fewer rituals and a working coffee machine. Preferably in that order.